Back with Chuck Cavaliers, Jimmy Himes, Mark Pancratz. 2 years ago on this show, I broke down by the numbers. We went deep on just how bad Rick Barnes' tournament history was. Even now, it stands at 28 tournaments all time. 16 of those he lost to a lower seed. He's 1-12 all time versus higher seeded teams, so he doesn't pull upsets. Thus, some folks call him second round Rick. All right. But after the last 2 years, I wanted to zoom out and compare him to the other SEC programs. We did this on the Sports Source Digital Network. I did a clip on it. We had Tyler, Will, Paige Dower, and Ryan Callahan debate it. I want these three to debate it, though. When you look at the last 6 seasons, let me go ahead and put up a graphic here. Just look at the last 6 seasons in the SEC. The NCAA Tournament gives you, the way they divvy up cash is each round you get to counts as another point, another unit. When you add up the units for the last 6 tournaments, Tennessee hasn't missed one. Now, nobody went in COVID year. There was no tournament. But Tennessee's made the last 6 tournaments. Nobody else in the SEC has made the last 6 tournaments. And when you add up total units, Tennessee is number 1. They've had the most consistent, best NCAA tournament output of the last 6 years. Now, you can say, but Alabama made a Final Four. But Auburn made a Final Four. And if you only judge it by that, you don't care about the other 5 years, okay. But look at Auburn. Everybody I've asked this to, it's like, who do you think's number 1? And the response is always, Auburn? No. Bruce Pearl's been out 3 times in the second round, 1 time in the first round. But you're no longer connected to it because it's not Tennessee, so it doesn't hurt and it doesn't make you mad. You don't notice it. When Rick Barnes goes out, oh, you notice it. It makes you mad. But when you compare him to the other guys in the league, okay, recently, Tennessee's program's done as much in the tournament as anybody else. So with 2 Sweet 16s and Elite 8, in terms of total units. So there's 2 different sides to this. And I can see you arguing either side. All time, yeah, kind of second round Rick. Recently, well, that's not fair when you look around the SEC.
Right.
So I'm going to ask you guys, is second round Rick fair game or a lazy take? Chuck Cavalier.
Well, I'm going to say that there was a time when I think that was appropriate. But what was last year, Elite 8? I mean, I'm one of these what have you done lately things. And I can remember when we were trying to decide whether Tennessee was going to play at Tennessee Tech in the NIT. So that chart right there, to me, puts it in a totally different perspective.
So you think second round Rick is a lazy take?
I think it's a lazy take based on recent history, which is more important than the whole body of work.
That's my take, because if you go on his career, he's 30-28 in the NCAA tournament. So that would be justifiable, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's fair game to say second round Rick.
Yeah. But what he's done lately, the last 6 years, as you showed, it wouldn't be necessarily accurate. So, but when I looked at his record, so he's 30-28. There are 22 coaches that I looked up that have won at least 60% of their NCAA tournament games all time.
Yeah.
And he's won 52%. Yeah. So from that, if you go all time, it's fair. If you go recent situations, I would say no.
We did this a couple of years ago when we went back and we looked at all the coaches who have winning percentages in the regular season and what they do in the tournament. There were 2 coaches that stood out as, man, they get to the tournament, it falls apart. It was him and Bob Huggins. And I think most people would take, well, not the off-field stuff, but I think most people would take Bob Huggins' body of work as well. It's a good coach for a lot of years. Mark Pancratz, I think a good attorney could argue that. Marcos Garza could argue that in either direction and convince me one way or the other. Is it fair game or is it a lazy take?
Well, I think a couple of things. One, Chuck mentioned, what have you done for me lately? I think that is affecting some of our responses right now because we've won 2 games in a row. We're coming off a big win versus Texas A&M. If we had lost, what would people be saying? Because when I walked around that arena at halftime of the Vanderbilt game, there were 2 people sitting front row, which means I have a little coin, that were saying, man, Rick, man, he's done. Like, we're ready to move on. So now, the flip side of that is when I coached at Tennessee, there was a guy at South Carolina, Darren Horn. We didn't want him to get fired. Why? Because he wasn't a very good coach.
He was the Wayne Houston of South Carolina, yeah.
If you go ask SEC coaches, they want Rick to retire because he's that good. The last point that we're going to have to add another column to this slide in future years is the payroll. Because you're going to then have to look at what are these programs paying for players to get the talent, and if you're winning with best talent and you've got a high payroll, that's a different type of expectation for you to win. Because look, if the university's spending X amount of $1 million on your staff and you're not winning, but yet this program's spending $1 million on your team and they are winning,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to affect how fans and administration is going to feel about their coaching staffs.
That's a great point. So,
Oh, do I think he's winning it?
Is he second round Rick?
No, I don't think it's a fair. I mean, coming off of
that's
Elite
just
Eight-
modern. It's the late. What have you done for me lately is affecting you.
No, I
No,
really don't.
it's-
I really don't think it's. And when you look at the macro,
picture,
of the
it
big
is.
picture of,
Yeah.
of no of what
recently
all
it's not.
coaches do, a lot of teams would take a second.
Well, that's true. But in terms
getting-
of if you expect to be in the tournament every year, you want your team to do something. And traditionally, he's made one Final Four in 28 tournaments, which.
Right.
and
it's
an Elite
Texas.
Eight and
Yeah.
a couple Sweet 16s. Like, I mean, there's other things that.
There's also judging it by Tennessee standards, and I always get back. We should look at it the same way Duke does. No, you shouldn't. That's stupid. You're not Duke. That's like saying Vanderbilt should look at football the way you do. No, they shouldn't because they're not on your level.
But again, that was the case, right? Now, if you look at payroll.
Well, if NIL changes,
right?
yes.
Now, that's what I'm saying.
Well,
that's why you
Tennessee's
have to
got a
add
lot of money,
That's what I'm
so,
saying. So
yeah.
now you have to add and look at, okay, are we now one of those
And-
green bloods
yeah,
because of the
green
money that
bloods.
we're able to spend on the roster?
Well, and trust me, I would if any of those numbers were public.
Sure.
But since we're all going by rumors and innuendos, this guy's getting paid how much? Since we don't know, it's impossible
Yeah.
to
And see,
create that
kind of like
column.
Jimmy, I based it on NCAA tournament success. I'm going to hear fans grumble now and then, here and there. I based it as second round Rick. What has he done in the tournament, and not so much, during the season
Well,
when
right,
you trail
but-
at halftime in a game, you come back and win.
No, but I think he's talking about the fact that you got people who, if he were going to Final Fours, you wouldn't have anybody at halftime saying that. I think would be the take. So,